All right, let's talk about vehicle operation. So you probably decided to click on the video because you either grabbed a vehicle and you lost it within 1 minute of being on the battlefield, or you're a new guy that respects logistics and you wanted to learn how to drive a vehicle, operate a tank, before you decided to run it out there on the front lines. Thank you, by the way. Now, this is going to be a general video for first time vehicle operators and new vehicle operators. A lot of the information I'm going to say is not information that you wouldn't know if you weren't a veteran. It is just a step-by-step guide on how to operate things that range all the way from field cannons, armored vehicles, all the way to battle tanks. So if you're a new player and you're looking for information, I'm going to try to provide you one video that you need to watch where you can apply to all land vehicles. There's going to be things that are useful for naval vehicles as well, but we're not going to go over naval vehicles in this video. Thank you for watching. This isn't a logistics video. I'm not going to go into how to acquire these vehicles or how to make them. What I am going to go over is the types of vehicles. I'm assuming that you've learned how to acquire a vehicle, you learned how to make a vehicle, so you can appreciate what it takes to operate and what it costs to lose a vehicle. We're going to talk about the vehicles very broadly, and it's going to apply to every category. However, I'm going to touch on a few notable vehicles that are probably going to be in a public stockpile for your disposal. And by watching this video, you're going to be able to drive them effectively and use them to the best of the ability. First one is we're going to talk about armored fighting vehicles. We're also going to talk about field weapons like push guns, and then we're going to get into tanks. So for the armored fighting vehicles, the O'Brien. So the O'Brien is an armored car that is available for the Warden faction. You guys can make it for 25 refined materials. I'm not going to be bringing up colonial vehicles, but you can apply the same logic to colonial vehicles. I'll provide a link to the wiki for Foxhole. On the right side of this wiki, when you click on the vehicle, the O'Brien, it gives you information here. We got 900 health. It disables under 30% health. Its resistance to different types of damage over here. You can see it's light armor resistance. How much it costs to repair 105 basic materials. This is what the tank armor is right here. The ammo type 792. It's really good. The O'Brien is a underutilized and underappreciated armored vehicle. Most of the people that I see driving it don't know how to drive it. We'll talk about that later. But just by clicking on the wiki really quick, getting an overview of what it is, you know what kind of ammo it uses, you know the health, you know what its resistances are, and how much it costs to make. That way, if you're a new player and you're just pulling from public stockpiles, you know that it still costs a lot to make in terms of time and effort, but it doesn't cost as much as, say pulling a tank. But this is really good information, the wiki right here. Just looking at it, it even tells you the range, and you click on inventory and armament. It'll tell you right here the range is 40 meters. Now that's really good for an armored vehicle that's going to be outranging most of the infantry weapons that could do a lot of damage to you. Any entrenchments, any emplacements will do heavy damage to the O'Brien, but we'll get into how you're supposed to drive them a little bit later. Another one of the common Warden tanks is going to be the Gallagher, or the Outlaw is what most people refer it to. It's got a 40 millimeter cannon. Its range is 45 meters. So that's really good range. We're now talking about one of the more heavy hitting vehicles that now has a pretty significant range, and it has a speed boost. Some vehicles have special perks. This one would be its speed boost. It costs more on gas, but if you hit shift while you're in a Gallagher, you're going to be going a little bit faster. It's actually not just a little bit, it's actually pretty significant. The downsides to this is the Gallaghers are pretty expensive, right? They're going to cost 150 RMATs. It takes a crew of 4 people, so you think about it, the cost is pretty high. You want to utilize it to the best of its ability, that we will talk about shortly. But it is a more expensive vehicle, and I recommend finding a full crew, because you got a 40 mil cannon that shoots 45 meters. You got a 792 turret that has a 60-degree firing arc. Again, you can just find all this information straight on the inventory and armaments. You have a commander seat, and then you also have the driver's seat. So depending on what you're good at, make a decision based on what roles that you're going to be playing in it. So one of the bigger tanks and one of the beefier in terms of health and armor is going to be the Noble Widow, which is the Warden's heavy tank destroyer. We go over to armaments. It's a 68mm cannon. This tank is slow, so when you're using this tank, you're going to be primarily using it for defense if you're solo, and you can push if you have allies. If you're really, really good and you're keeping track of the map and the radio, and you have the radio on you, you could probably get away by sneaking it and trying to do a little bit of a solo offense. But I'd fully man this if it were me and it was just a Noble Widow on the battlefield without infantry or allied armor reinforcements. You'd really have to be smart about where you're taking this out to. One thing that I'd like to start seeing out there is new players utilize a lot more of the field cannons. Right now we're looking at a 40mm field cannon. It's a push gun. There are 68mm push guns, and there are anti-infantry push guns that have 12.7 ammunition. If you look under armaments, we got 35-meter range. That's pretty short. However, they do have blast shields. They can take a significant amount of take shots. They can't get tracked, so they're the same speed. There's little margin of error when it comes to driving them and operating them, because you won't slow down unless you're going up or downhill. They just, when they disable under 30% health, and they have a whopping 2,850 health. So these things are super underutilized. If you're a new player and you want to kill tanks, you jump on one of these, you learn how to use one of these, you're going to be, people are going to be giving you commands. You're going to be opening up some eyes. They only cost 20 refined materials. So they're the cheapest, I would say one of the cheapest movable, or operatable utilities or vehicles that can make the biggest amount of impact. So why are we on the wiki? Why are we here? Well, it's important for you to understand your vehicle. And now you know that, if you scroll down in the description down below, there'll be a link that you can click on. You could search up your vehicle and you can get a good idea of how it's going to do on the battlefield. Let's break down more in depth. The Gallagher will do it one time with this vehicle, and you guys can do it on your own with whatever vehicle you're driving. It's a cruiser tank. The health, 2,950. Disabled under 30% health. That's a good amount of health. It's got the ability to speed boost. You press shift, and there's a higher fuel consumption, but it makes you go faster. It's good for getting someplace quickly. And that can be broken down to, you can engage somebody really quickly and then pull back. Tank armor, 11,000, 33 to 67%. Subsystems are disabled. If there is penetration, you get hit in the tracks, 20% to disable. If you get hit somewhere near the engine or the fuel tank, 30% for a fuel leak. And if you do that, if that happens, you're gonna want to pull out of combat quickly, or try to put yourself in a position where you could either pull the fuel out or repair it really quickly. If you get hit in the turret and you get a penetration, it's a big hit, 20% to disable the turret. So you have to consider those things when you're shooting at it. If you're engaging enemy cruiser tank, you want to know what tank you're engaging, and you want to know your tank's vulnerabilities and vice versa. So the more knowledge you can soak in about what these tanks, how these tanks operate, where their strong and weak points are, what the percentages are, and how much health they have, where, if you're engaging them head on, you can kind of estimate what chances you stand. Again, the Gallagher has a 40mm cannon, 45 meters. That's crazy. Reload is 5 seconds, 5.5. It's actually pretty long. I think that's pretty long. 7.92 machine gun, 60% cone at a 40-meter range. So it's got a pretty good armament. It does cost 150 armats. Again, that's pretty high. It has a 200-liter capacity. It has a 200-liter fuel capacity. So some of the more important considerations that you're going to want to be taking a look at when picking a tank. And I know the veterans heavily rely on stuff like range, speed, caliber of ammunition, right? What kind of cannon are you using? Are you using a 68? Are you using a 40? What are you using it for? Are you using a 30 cannon? There are also 94 mil cannons. A lot of new players on the front lines will find that if they're in an armored vehicle, one of the biggest considerations is going to be range. So looking at this image, you might think to yourself, oh, it's easy. You know, the vehicles at the top are better than the vehicles at the bottom. That's, for the most part, false. Why, you have to consider a few things when you're thinking about, you know, what kind of vehicles you're using. You have to think about their range. You have to think about what type of ammunition they're using. If they're even movable, you have to think about their armor, whether or not they need infantry support at the very least, or they need armored support, right? So the Noble Widow, it's 68 cannon. It's very slow. It needs, at the very least, infantry support. You might be thinking that the 68 push gun, because it's an unarmored vehicle, because it's not a tank, it might not be that great. The 68 push gun for the Warden faction is a beast. It is a monster. It's got high health. It's got good damage resistance. It can go toe to toe with battle. It can trade with battle tanks because it doesn't get disabled until, like, you know, below 30%. It's a beast. If you were to ask me my honest and personal opinion about, you know, what's the most underutilized, underappreciated, you know, abused vehicle just based off of how people drive them, I would give you a couple answers. I would say that the 68 push gun is underutilized and underappreciated because it's a beast and not many people use that. I see more armored, you know, vehicles out there than I do push guns, which it doesn't make sense to me because they're like a fraction of the cost. The 40 millimeter push gun, for the same reason, literally just they're 20 arm match. Just instead of making one tank, just make fucking 8 push guns. Especially if, like, how the war's going with the Warden faction, like, if your faction's losing, just spit out push guns. You don't need to drive a tank. I would also say the armored car is underutilized and abused for anti-infantry support, right? Not a lot of people like playing the support role, but if you're an armored car, you're a support role. If you're trying to frontline an armored car, I mean, you're doing it wrong if you're not being careful. If you think you're a tank, you're not a tank. However, I've had game sessions where I get an armored car that's public and I go on a killing rampage. I mean, we kill 50 plus armored plus enemy infantry, and then we just give the armored car away, or maybe we lose it after that, and that's just because I think I'm a good driver. Now, so there's going to be some images popping up on screen, and I'm going to quickly touch down, that way you can get onto the road driving, on the things that you need, the equipment you need, where to get them, and then I'm also going to be talking about the roles. So if you're in a tank and you're the driver, you need to make sure that your tank is refueled. Where do you find that fuel? You can find it in a refinery. You can find it in diesel or petroleum containers that are located around the city. Other players put those down for you to refuel. Typically, they're right by the garages. Typically, they're right by the storage or seaports. Additionally, if you're the driver, and there's no commander spot, right? There's no commander, you're the driver. That also makes you the commander, right? And you're going to need to coordinate with your turret or your gunner to effectively, you know, assess how the battlefield's going. You know, have them tell you what's happening. What am I, you know, what does it look like up front? Also, the equipment that you're going to need binoculars so you can assess the battlefield directly in front of you. You're going to need a radio so that you can press M on the map and get intelligence on where the enemy's at. You're going to need a hammer and basic materials, as many as you can hold, and you sacrifice basic materials based on whether or not you want to hold a gun if you feel like you need it. Additionally, gas mask. Make sure you have the gas mask on. Now, what do you need if you're the gunner? Well, assuming that your driver understands that he's the commander, you don't need binocs, you don't need a radio. What you need is a hammer and BMATs. You double as a gunner and engineer. You put a boiler suit on, or a tanking uniform on. As you can also substitute that for an engineer uniform. Same thing. BMATs, gas mask, hammer. You should be good to go. You don't need anything else. You just help the driver with whatever he needs help with. Usually it's just information. And you shoot colonial infantry. If you're shooting Warden infantry, you're wrong. Next is the commander. If you're the commander, I always view the commander role as a support role, an intelligence role. I never view the commander role as the one who leads the tank. Some people play like that. I opt not to. Because as a driver, if I'm understanding my vehicle and I understand the range and the distance, I understand when and when we're not getting hit, because commander might be looking through binocs and might be telling you something and they don't see that you just got hit with a missile. I usually default to what the driver wants to do is right, not the commander. The commander is there for intelligence. If some people want to play as the commander and they want to LARP really hard and say, you know, follow my directions because I'm the commander, that's fine. But typically, when a driver has a radio and a driver has binocs, they know how to drive the vehicle and they know how to assess the situation via map or binocs. That tank's going to be more successful than a driver that doesn't know what he's doing and he's just following orders, period. Could go different. If you have a very experienced driver and a very experienced commander, I can see how they could work together to make decisions in tandem versus just following one person. I would still opt to playing in a tank. If I was commander, I would only be playing as a support role. I wouldn't be leading the tank. I would say that the driver's responsibility to lead the tank. What do you need as a commander? You're a glorified engineer. That's what you are. If you're a commander and you don't have an engineer uniform on or a boiler suit uniform on to take control if something bad happens, I don't know what you're doing. You might as well play medic, you know. Now, some tanks like the super heavies or the battle tanks are gonna have an additional slot, whether it be for an additional weapon on the back or a designated engineer slot. Now, if you're the designated engineer, obviously BMAT, maybe a secondary firearm, a hammer, and then you get in the tank, and some tanks have the ability for you to repair in the tank. Now, when you do that, you got to be careful because when you start repairing inside the tank comes to a halt. So if you're an engineer, you know your role. It's pretty simple. When the tank goes boom, it backs up, you go out and you go hammer, hammer, hammer. That's all there is to it. Keep it at 100%. So everything I just said right now literally applies to the whole spectrum of armored land vehicles. It's as simple as that. There's a couple of roles. Understand your roles. Understand your vehicle that you're driving. We just covered that in the first segment of the video. Right now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you one method of how to play the game. I'm the driver in this vehicle. It is an outlaw, so we got a 45 meter range as well as a 40 mil cannon. I got 3 people in it, not 4. I'm the driver. I'm the commander. Horizon is the gunner. And Daniel Ross is on the turret. And we're going to see how I do during this engagement. So for context, this is north of the Latch. The Colonials have pushed us back with a greater armor force. And we're trying to fight. We're defending / pushing them back to try to get enemy armored kills as well as enemy vehicle kills to soften them up so that we can push back later. The most underutilized thing, and it'll always be this, if it's not being utilized, it's the most underutilized thing. It's your comms, your communication. Watch what happens. Back. I need you on the left side. Little tank, right? Little tank on the left and the right side. Here we go. We outgunned them now. Stay with me. On me. Go. Stop. Back. Back. Keep backing up. We gotta repair. Good job. Good push. Good strategy. So after the engagement, we just pull back and repair. That was one snippet of like a 30-second encounter that we had that I was trying to do all night. So when you're a tank driver and there's other tanks around, the most important thing that you have is communication coordination, right? So how do you do that? You just talk. And you don't need anything other than 3 words. 3 words. You ready for them? It's go. Stop, and back. I'm teaching you this because if you have a good understanding of your range, the enemy range, your defensive and offensive capabilities, as well as the enemies, you can make determinations on when you should push forward and attack, like right after they shoot their cannons and they miss you, or right after they hit to trade hits. You also know when to back up. After you guys have all shot, you start backing up. You don't push after you shot, because after you shot, you need to reload. So you guys back up. The reason why you would say stop is because you don't want anybody who doesn't know what they're doing to pass you. Right? So if they're listening to you, which usually they do in the heat of the moment, you want them to stop on you. You're making the determination when to stop if you're the driver or the commander. So I thought that was a good little snippet to show you guys so that you guys can learn. just a trick. It's just the go, the stop, and the back. That's all it is. Now, hopefully I've put enough images on screen to give you guys a pretty good understanding of what you need, what the roles are, how to fuel the tank, right? I don't want to make this a super long video. I just want to give you the information that you need to go out there and effectively drive in a tank. There's a whole bunch of things to consider when you're tanking, right? It's not super simple. You got to be watching the map. You got to be hopping out to check, your vehicle, whether or not it's repaired or not. You got to be checking binocs to see how close or how far the enemy is. You got to be watching out for landmines, right? You got to make a determination whether there's enough enemy infantry to justify holding, or if it's a little bit of enemy infantry and you can push to attack whatever your objective is. You gotta consider if there's enough allied infantry to even push if you're just defending, right? There's all these things to consider. And the one thing that you need to know that's more important than anything else is your capabilities. And it starts with knowledge. If you have a lot of knowledge on your tank, your capabilities, and you have a good crew, you can change any battlefield just by being there. I mean, you could show up with an armored car and make a difference. You could show up with a push gun and just start dropping tanks. And they might not come back to back to back, but they will come eventually. After 10, 20, 30 minutes of gameplay, you'll start racking up some kills and some numbers. Because you get a tank kill, that's 1 point. You get an infantry kill, that's 1 point. It's all good to me because the infantry kit still costs more than 1 round of ammunition. So shoot the infantry too. Just make sure that you're not prioritizing wrong. Make sure that there's not a tank waiting for you to shoot the infantry for it to push you, right? Anyway, I digress. I might make another video and go more in depth about the strategies of tanking, but I just wanted to give you guys the roles, responsibilities, what you need, and kind of like a quick tip, right, to get you guys out there. If you're a new player, welcome to Foxhole. If you're a veteran, let me know what I did wrong. You guys have a good day.